I didn't plan to make an entrance. I just walked in with the small navy gift bag tucked under my arm, the one I'd picked up on my lunch break because it felt wrong to show up empty-handed. It was Colton's office party, my husband. Promotion night. I'd almost skipped it. He'd said it was mostly coworkers and that spouses were optional. I took that as code for boring, but halfway through folding laundry, I changed my mind. I wanted to surprise him. I wanted to see his face when he realized I'd shown up anyway. The room was full. White tablecloths, a skyline view, people in tailored jackets and dresses that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. I scanned faces, smiling politely as I moved deeper into the space. I spotted Colton near the bar. He wasn't alone. His back was to me, his posture relaxed, one hand resting lightly at the small of a woman's back. Not a hug. Not accidental. Familiar. Possessive. The kind of touch you don't think about because you've done it 1,000 times before. I slowed, my steps turning careful, like the floor might give out if I moved too fast. She was tall, polished. Dark hair pulled into a sleek knot. Her dress fit her like it had been planned weeks in advance. She laughed at something Colton said and leaned in close, her hand brushing his arm. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. I told myself this was work. This was nothing. Then a man beside them turned and saw me. He smiled warmly. Friendly. Oblivious. "Oh," he said, gesturing between me and the woman at Colton's side. "You must be the sister." The word hit like a dropped glass. I felt my mouth open before my brain caught up. "Sorry?" He chuckled, clearly embarrassed. "I mean, my mistake. I just assumed. Have you met his family yet?" The room didn't go silent. That's the thing people get wrong. Life doesn't stop for moments like this. The music kept playing. Someone laughed too loudly near the buffet. Ice clinked in a glass. But Colton froze. I watched it happen in real time, the way his shoulders locked, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes flicked from the man to me, then to the woman whose hand was still on his arm. Her smile faltered. Confusion crossed her face, then something sharper. Awareness. I looked at Colton. "Family?" I asked, my voice steady enough to surprise even me. He didn't answer. The woman turned fully toward me now. She searched my face, like she was trying to place me in a story she'd been told. "I'm sorry," she said carefully. "I thought you were—" "His wife," I said. It wasn't loud. I didn't need it to be. A ripple went through the small circle around us. A few heads turned. Someone's laughter died mid-sentence. Colton finally spoke. "Serena, I can explain." I smiled then. A tight, polite thing. The kind of smile women learn early. The one that keeps you from being labeled hysterical. "You don't have to," I said. "It's all very clear." The man who'd spoken first went pale. Wow, I had no idea. Colton always brings— He stopped himself, eyes darting to the woman beside him. She stepped back like she'd been burned. "You told me you were separated," she said to Colton, her voice low but sharp. "You said it was done." Colton reached for her. She moved away. I took a breath, not to calm myself, to anchor myself, because if I didn't, I might say something I couldn't take back. I turned to her. "How long?" I asked. She hesitated. Then, quietly, "Almost a year." A year, a full rotation of holidays, birthdays, school events, late nights when he said work ran long. Colton shook his head. "This isn't the place." I laughed once, a short sound that surprised a few people nearby. "You're right," I said. "It isn't." I reached into my bag and pulled out the gift I'd brought. I handed it to him. "For your promotion," I said. "Congratulations." His hands trembled as he took it. "I'll send someone to get the rest of my things," I continued, my voice level. "You don't need to come home tonight, or tomorrow, or ever." "Serena," he whispered. "Please." I leaned in close enough that only he could hear me. "You made this public," I said. "Not me." I straightened and looked around. Faces everywhere now, some sympathetic, some curious, some already filing the moment away to retell later. I met his eyes one last time. I hope she's worth it. Then I turned and walked out. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked composed, unbroken. I kept it that way until the doors opened and the cool night air hit my face. My phone buzzed immediately. Then again, and again. I didn't answer. I stepped onto the sidewalk, the city humming around me like nothing had changed. But everything had. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I opened my car door, set the empty gift bag on the passenger seat, and sat there for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. I didn't go home that night. I drove until the skyline thinned and the streets went quiet, until I pulled into the parking lot of a grocery store that stayed open 24 hours, just so I wouldn't have to decide where I belonged. I sat there with the engine off, phone face down, and tried to understand how a year could disappear without me noticing. Colton and I met 12 years ago, back when ambition still felt romantic. He was driven, restless, convinced he was meant for something bigger than the job he had at the time. I believed him. I believed in him. That was the beginning of the pattern. When he got his first real offer in tech consulting, we moved without hesitation. I left a role I'd worked hard for. Brand strategy, steady clients, momentum. We told ourselves it was temporary, that I could always restart later. I was good at restarting. I'd done it before. Then came the house. The one with the backyard just big enough for a swing set and the quiet street people brag about when they talk schools. The down payment came from my side, an inheritance from my grandmother that I'd never planned to touch. Colton framed it as an investment in us. I let myself believe that. Isla was born 2 years later. Suddenly, temporary stretched into something heavier. Childcare costs, travel schedules, Colton's hours growing longer and less predictable. It made sense for me to stay home. At least that's how we explained it to everyone else. At night, I told myself I was choosing stability. There were signs. I see them now with painful clarity. The phone that never left his side. The way he'd step into another room to take calls he used to answer openly. The late meetings that always landed on Fridays. The trips that didn't add up when I checked his calendar too closely. Once, I asked him directly if there was someone else. He laughed. Not cruelly, comfortably. Like the idea itself was absurd. "I don't even have time to sleep," he said. "You think I'm running around?" I felt foolish for asking. I apologized. That's another thing I regret. By the time Isla started school, Colton was already living a version of his life that didn't include us. Dinners missed, events canceled. A distance that crept in slowly enough to feel normal. I filled the gap with logistics, playdates, groceries, bills, homework. I kept everything running so smoothly that there was no friction left to alert me something was wrong. The night after the office party, I finally checked his phone. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed proof. I needed something solid to push against the fog in my head. It didn't take long. Messages archived, not deleted. Photos saved under generic file names. Calendar invites labeled client dinner that lined up perfectly with the gaps in his explanations. Almost a year. I felt the weight of it then. Not just the betrayal, but the risk. My name tied to assets I'd partially funded. A child who deserved stability. A life I'd built around someone who'd been lying to my face without missing a beat. I drove to my friend Mara's place just before dawn. She took one look at me and didn't ask questions. She made coffee and listened while I told her everything, my voice flat like I was reading someone else's story. When I finished, she didn't rush to comfort me. She didn't tell me it would be okay. She said, "You need to protect yourself. And Isla." Later that morning, I went to pick Isla up from Colton's sister's house. She'd stayed there overnight because Colton had asked for help. Just in case. I didn't make it home. Isla climbed into the car, quiet in a way that made my chest tighten. Halfway down the street, she spoke. "Mom?" she said, staring out the window. "Why doesn't Dad come to things anymore?" I didn't answer right away. He told my teacher he might come to the assembly, she continued. But he didn't. Serena was there, though. I felt my grip tighten on the wheel. Serena? She nodded. The lady from his work. She came with him to Family Day last month. He said you were busy. The road blurred for a second. I forced myself to focus. What did you think? I asked carefully. Isla shrugged. I thought maybe she was like you used to be, before you stayed home. That was it. Not the messages, not the photos, not the excuses. My daughter had been introduced to the woman he was replacing me with. I pulled the car over and took a breath deep enough to hurt. Isla looked at me, her eyes searching my face for reassurance. I'm sorry, she said softly, like she'd done something wrong. I reached for her hand. You didn't do anything, I said. None of this is on you, but inside, something settled. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about control, about erasure, about a man who'd decided my presence in his life was optional, and I wasn't going to let that stand. I didn't confront Colton right away. That was the first real decision I made, the moment I stopped reacting and started planning. I dropped Isla off at school like everything was normal. I smiled at the office staff. I waved to the crossing guard. I waited until I was back in my car, doors locked, before I let the anger surface. Not explode. Surface. Controlled. Focused. By noon, I had a notebook open on the kitchen counter. Not emotional rambling. Lists, accounts, properties, insurance policies, retirement funds, credit cards, anything with my name on it, or my money in it. I logged into our joint accounts first. I wasn't surprised to see how much had moved recently. Transfers that hadn't been discussed. Expenses that weren't family-related. I took screenshots of everything. Dates, amounts, destinations. Then I froze them. Not emptied, not drained. Frozen. Enough to stop the bleeding. Enough to send a message. I called a family law attorney I'd been quietly referred to years ago, back when a neighbor went through a messy divorce and swore this woman had saved her life. Her assistant asked if it was urgent. Yes, I said. It is. By the time Colton realized he couldn't access the joint account, I was already emailing documents. Mortgage statements. The original wire transfer for the down payment, from my inheritance. Proof that my money hadn't just supported our life, but built it. Next, I packed. Not everything. Just what mattered. My documents, Isla's birth certificate, school records, my grandmother's jewelry, clothes for a week. The rest could wait. The rest was replaceable. I didn't leave a note. I changed passwords instead. Email, cloud storage, banking, streaming services, anything tied to my name or payment method. I didn't touch his work accounts. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't interested in chaos. I was interested in leverage. At 3:15, my phone started buzzing. Colton, why can't I access the account? Colton, Serena, please call me. Colton, this is not okay. I didn't respond. I picked Isla up from school and took her for ice cream like I'd promised the night before. She talked about a group project and a new friend. I listened like my life hadn't just split open. That night, after she fell asleep in the guest room at Mara's place, I finally checked my voicemail. Colton sounded panicked, not remorseful. Panicked. Serena, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is going to affect bills. My work card isn't working either. You can't just... I deleted it halfway through. The next morning, I listed the house. Not publicly yet. Quietly. Preliminary valuation, market comps, timelines. I wanted options ready before he realized how serious this was. By noon, my attorney called me back. She didn't ask why. She asked how prepared I was to move quickly. I am, I said. Good, she replied. Because the first person who acts usually controls the pace. That afternoon, Colton showed up at Mara's place. I saw his car through the window before he knocked. My stomach tightened. Not fear, not doubt. Just the weight of something unavoidable. I stepped outside before he could ring the bell. He looked wrecked, wrinkled shirt, shadows under his eyes. The confident executive posture gone. "You blindsided me," he said, like I'd broken a rule. "No," I replied. "You just didn't expect consequences. You froze our accounts," he snapped. "I can't even access my own money." "Correction," I said. "You can't access my money." He ran a hand through his hair. "This isn't how adults handle things." I laughed softly. "You brought another woman into our child's life and introduced her as family. Don't lecture me about handling things." His mouth opened, closed. "I made a mistake," he said finally. "I can fix this." "You made a choice," I said. Repeatedly, for a year. Silence stretched between us. "Are you leaving me?" he asked, like the idea had only just occurred to him. I met his eyes, calm, steady. "I already left," I said. Something in his face shifted then, not anger, not arrogance. Shock. Real shock. I turned back toward the house. "You should get a lawyer," I added. "Things are going to move fast." Behind me, he said my name again. I didn't turn around. I was already in motion. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves. The first hit Colton within 24 hours. His credit card declined at a client dinner. Not a quiet one either. He texted me in all caps like that would scare me into compliance. "Colton, this is embarrassing. Fix it." I didn't reply. The second wave reached his office. HR called him in for clarification. Not because of me, because Serena stopped showing up. She took a sick day, then another, then asked to be moved to a different team. People talk when patterns break, especially in corporate spaces that pretend to be discreet. By the third day, the story had shifted. Not if something happened, but what exactly happened. I heard it from Mara first. A mutual friend had texted her. Did Serena really find out at the party? In front of everyone? I hadn't told anyone details. I didn't need to. Public moments have a way of rewriting themselves without your help. Colton tried a different tactic then. Emails. Longer. More measured. Apologies threaded with concern about optics, finances, how this could affect Isla. That's when I finally responded. One sentence. All communication goes through my attorney. The calls stopped after that, at least from him. His mother called next. She didn't ask how I was. She asked what I'd done. "Colton says you froze everything," she said, like I'd taken something that wasn't mine. "I secured my assets," I replied. "There's a difference." She sighed. "You know he's under a lot of pressure at work." "So was I said. "For years." She didn't have an answer for that. By the end of the week, the consequences started reaching places Colton couldn't control. The joint savings account, half of it traced directly to my inheritance, was legally separated. My attorney moved quickly. So did his. That alone shifted the balance. He wasn't used to being behind. Serena quit. Not dramatically. No scene. Just gone. A colleague texted Mara again. She said she didn't know he was married, that she feels blindsided. I believed that part, but I didn't care. Fallout doesn't choose sides. Isla noticed the change before anyone else. Kids always do. "Dad's not answering my messages," she said one night while brushing her teeth. "He will," I said carefully. "Things are just different right now." She nodded, accepting it in that quiet way children do when they sense honesty, but not the full truth. The hardest moment came when Colton showed up at her school unannounced. I got the call while I was reviewing documents with my attorney. "Your husband is here," the receptionist said hesitantly. "He says it's urgent." I arrived 10 minutes later. He was standing in the hallway, jacket slung over his arm, eyes wild. "You can't do this," he said as soon as he saw me. "You can't keep her from me." "I didn't," I replied. "You didn't coordinate. There are rules now." He laughed bitterly. "Rules. You love rules when they work for you." I leaned in. "I love boundaries," I said. "You should try respecting one." Teachers were watching. Parents too. The same kind of witnesses, different setting. He stepped back. That night, he tried again. A voicemail. His voice cracked this time. "Serena, I'm losing everything. Please, just talk to me." I listened to the whole thing. Then I archived it. The consequences weren't finished, not even close. But for the first time since that night on the rooftop, I felt something shift. Not relief, not satisfaction. Momentum. And Colton felt it too. The invitation came through his attorney. A mediated dinner. Neutral ground. Public enough to keep things civil. That was the word they used. I agreed for one reason only. Colton still believed he could manage perception. And I wanted witnesses. The restaurant sat on the waterfront. Glass walls, linen tables. The kind of place where conversations carry because everyone pretends not to listen. I arrived early. Not nervous. Prepared. When Colton walked in, he wasn't alone. Serena followed him, half a step behind, her posture tight, eyes already scanning the room. She looked different than she had at the party. Less polished, more cautious. Like someone who'd realized too late the story they were part of wasn't the one they were promised. Colton smiled when he saw me. Too quickly, like a reflex. "Thank you for coming," he said, pulling out a chair. "I thought it might help to talk face to face." I stayed standing. "You invited me to dinner," I said. "You didn't invite me to be ambushed." Serena flinched. "This concerns her too," Colton replied. "She's part of my life now." A couple at the next table went quiet. Forks paused midair. I turned to Serena. "Did he tell you he brought you here to negotiate custody and assets with his wife?" Her eyes widened. She looked at him. "You said this was just to clear the air." I took my seat then. Slowly, deliberately. "I'll make this easy," I said. "You don't need to be here." Colton's jaw tightened. "Serena, don't leave." She didn't sit. "Is any of what he told me true?" she asked him. "About being separated? About the accounts? About you being locked out of your own house?" I watched his confidence crack under the weight of a direct question. "It's complicated," he said. That was enough. Serena exhaled sharply. "That's what you said when I asked why your daughter didn't know about me." Her voice carried. A waiter slowed as he passed. "I can't do this," she said, backing away from the table. "I didn't sign up to be a secret or a shield." She looked at me then. Really looked. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what it's worth." Then she left. Colton stared after her, stunned, like he'd just watched a safety net disappear. He turned back to me, his face flushed. "That wasn't fair." I folded my hands on the table. "Neither was introducing her to our child." His voice dropped. "You're enjoying this." "No," I said. "I'm finishing it." He leaned forward. "You're destroying my reputation." I met his eyes. "You built it on a lie." A man at the bar glanced over. Someone whispered. The room had shifted again. People sense collapse the way animals sense storms. "You don't have to do this publicly," Colton said. "We can keep things private." I smiled. Not kind, not cruel, clear. "You lost the right to privacy when you made me a stranger in my own marriage." He swallowed. I stood. "Here's how this ends," I said, loud enough that the nearest tables couldn't pretend anymore. "You stop pretending this was a misunderstanding. You stop contacting me directly. And you stop involving our daughter in your damage control." He stood too. "Or what?" I picked up my bag. "Or the next conversation won't be at a restaurant." Silence pressed in around us. I looked at him one last time. "You didn't lose me because I left," I said. "You lost me because you replaced me." Then I walked out. Behind me, chairs scraped. Conversations resumed in hushed bursts. Someone laughed nervously. Colton didn't follow. For the second time, he'd been undone in public. And this time, there was no one left to stand beside him. Colton didn't disappear after the restaurant. He regrouped. That was his pattern. Control through reframing. If he couldn't win the truth, he'd try to outpace it. By Monday morning, the narrative had shifted. Subtly at first. A few mutual friends stopped responding. A colleague I used to trust sent a careful message asking if things were being exaggerated. Colton wasn't denying the affair. He was diluting it. A mistake. A separation in progress. A marriage that had been over for a while. I recognized the strategy immediately. He was building plausible deniability, one softened version at a time. So I stopped waiting. My attorney had warned me about timing. Once he starts shaping the story, she said, you either let it calcify or you correct it decisively. I chose decisive. I didn't post anything myself. I didn't need to. I forwarded a single email thread to my attorney, screenshots attached, dates highlighted, nothing editorialized. Calendar invites marked client dinner, receipts from restaurants on nights he'd claimed to be traveling, photos Serena had unknowingly sent him, timestamped during weekends he'd taken Isla to team-building retreats. My attorney released exactly what was necessary. No commentary, no emotion. Just a clean, chronological record that dismantled every softened version he'd been circulating. It spread faster than I expected. Not viral in the way people imagine, not trending hashtags or headlines, but through group chats, internal emails, whispered conversations that reached decision-makers before Colton even realized the floor had dropped. By Tuesday afternoon, his firm requested a formal meeting. By Wednesday, his speaking engagement for a regional conference was quietly removed from the schedule. By Thursday, the story was no longer about a messy divorce. It was about credibility. Colton called me that night from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. You leaked private information, he said, his voice tight with anger. You're trying to ruin me. I corrected misinformation, I replied. You started it. I finished it. There was a pause. Then something desperate crept in. You don't understand how this looks. I almost laughed. I understand exactly how it looks. That's why I didn't add a single word. He exhaled sharply. People are treating me like I'm radioactive. I said nothing. They're questioning my judgment, my ethics. Clients are asking questions. Good, I said. They should. He went quiet. The next attempt came through Isla. He asked for an unscheduled visit, claimed he needed to explain things, before she heard lies from someone else. I declined through my attorney. The following day, Isla came home with questions anyway. Why are people mad at Dad? She asked softly. I knelt in front of her, level with her eyes. People aren't mad, I said. They're disappointed, and that's something he has to handle. She thought about that, then nodded. Kids understand disappointment better than adults give them credit for. By the end of the week, Serena resurfaced, this time publicly. Not an attack, a statement. Short, controlled, carefully worded. She confirmed the relationship, clarified she'd been misled, apologized to anyone impacted unintentionally. That was the final fracture. Colton texted me immediately. Colton, she didn't have to do that. Colton, you pushed her. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. I didn't push her. You stood on lies. They collapse eventually. He didn't respond. The firm placed him on administrative leave pending review. That was when the panic set in. He showed up at Mara's place again, unannounced, voice raised just enough to attract attention from the sidewalk. You've turned everyone against me, he said. This has gone too far. I stepped outside, calm as ever. You're experiencing consequences at scale, I said. It feels bigger because you're no longer controlling the frame. He shook his head. You always had to win. No, I said. I just stopped losing quietly. That night, I lay awake thinking not about him, but about momentum. Once truth starts moving, it doesn't need help. It only needs space. And Colton was finally out of room. The legal part wasn't dramatic. It was worse than that. It was efficient. Once Colton was placed on leave, his leverage evaporated. Income uncertainty changes the tone of negotiations fast. His attorney stopped posturing. Mine stopped waiting. We filed first. Custody paperwork went through with documentation already attached. School schedules, primary caregiving records, proof of stability. Isla's routine had always revolved around me. Now it was simply written down and stamped. Colton contested at first, not aggressively, desperately. He asked for flexibility, for shared weeks, for time to get back on his feet. The judge listened, then looked at the timeline. A year-long affair, financial commingling, introducing a third party to a minor without disclosure. Temporary orders were issued before lunch. Primary custody to me. Supervised visits until further review. I didn't celebrate. I breathed. The financial dismantling came next. The house sale moved faster than expected. The market was hot. The original down payment, my inheritance, was legally traced and returned to me in full. Colton hadn't realized how clearly that money had been documented. Neither had his father. That call came on a Thursday afternoon. I almost didn't answer. "Serena," his father said, his voice older than I remembered. "I've reviewed everything." I waited. "What Colton did," he continued, "was indefensible." I closed my eyes. "He asked me for help," he said. I declined. That was it. No lecture, no apology on his son's behalf, just withdrawal. Colton's brother followed a day later. A short message. "I can't be involved in this. I hope Isla's okay." Support retracts quietly when shame enters the room. By the end of the month, Colton's financial reality had changed completely. No steady paycheck, legal fees stacking, credit restricted. The apartment he'd moved into was temporary and expensive. Serena lost her footing, too. Her resignation had protected her reputation at first, but proximity leaves residue. She struggled to land another role in the same industry. The timeline followed her. So did the association. She sent me one final message through a mutual contact. I didn't know, but I see now how much damage was done. I'm stepping away from everything connected to him. I didn't reply. Fallout doesn't require acknowledgement. The final blow landed quietly. Colton missed a scheduled visit with Isla. No explanation, no call. She noticed anyway. "Is Dad sick?" she asked. I chose honesty, measured and calm. "He's dealing with things he didn't prepare for," I said. "That's not your fault." She nodded, then went back to her homework. That night, Colton left a voicemail. Not angry, not pleading, empty. "I don't know where to go," he said. "I don't know how this happened." I listened once, then deleted it. By the time the divorce terms were finalized, there was nothing left to argue over. Assets divided, access limited, narratives settled. Colton wasn't ruined in the cinematic sense. He was dismantled in the practical one. And when I signed the final document, pen steady, I didn't feel triumph. I felt distance, which, I'd learned, was far more powerful. The last meeting wasn't ordered by a judge or suggested by attorneys. It was requested by Colton. He emailed my lawyer first. Then, when that didn't get an immediate response, he emailed me directly. The message was short, stripped of ego. "I need to see you once, not to argue, just to finish this." I agreed on one condition: public place, daylight, limited time. We met at a small cafe near the courthouse, the kind of place people use while waiting for paperwork or verdicts, neutral, temporary, honest in its transience. I arrived early, sat where I could see the door. When Colton walked in, I barely recognized him. He looked smaller. Not physically, but structurally. Like something essential had been removed and the rest hadn't adjusted yet. His jacket was clean but worn, his hair unstyled. He hesitated before spotting me, then walked over slowly, like each step required permission. "Thank you for coming," he said. I nodded. "You have 20 minutes. He sat down and wrapped his hands around his coffee like it was the only solid thing left in his life. "I've lost everything," he said quietly. I didn't respond. "My job, my standing, my family." He swallowed. I don't even know where I fit anymore. I watched him carefully. Not with anger, with assessment. You fit exactly where your choices placed you, I said. He looked up then, eyes rimmed red. I never meant for it to go this far. That's the thing, I replied. Intent doesn't outrank impact. He nodded like he'd rehearsed that answer. I made mistakes. I know that now. Mistakes are accidental, I said. You curated a second life. Silence settled between us. The hum of conversation around us filled the space he used to occupy. I want to be better, he said finally. For Isla. I leaned forward slightly. Then start by not using her as a bridge back to me. His face tightened. That's not what I'm doing. It is, I said. Every time you say her name in this context, you're trying to soften consequences you don't want to face alone. He looked away. I loved you, he said. I considered that. Then shook my head. You loved what I provided. Stability, cover, continuity. That's not fair. It's accurate. He exhaled slowly. Is there really nothing left between us? I held his gaze. There's a record. There's a history. There's a child we will co-parent carefully. But there is no access. Access? He repeated. Yes, I said. To my life, my time, my emotions. You forfeited that. He looked around, as if searching for an argument that would land. I'm starting over from nothing. No, I corrected. You're starting over from truth. That's different. He laughed once bitterly. You always did know how to cut clean. I learned because I had to, I said. You trained me. The barista called an order. Cups clinked. Life continued. I want forgiveness, he said, voice barely audible. I paused. Not for effect, for clarity. Forgiveness is internal, I said. It's not a transaction you negotiate to reduce discomfort. He nodded slowly. Then what is this? This, I said, standing, is closure. He looked up at me, eyes wide with something close to fear. So that's it? I picked up my bag. That's it. He stood abruptly. Serena, please, I need to know that I'm not a villain in your story. I met his eyes one last time. You're not the villain, I said calmly. You're the lesson. The words landed harder than anything else I'd said. I stepped back. We'll communicate through the parenting app. Emergencies only. Anything else goes through counsel. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I turned toward the door. Serena, he called softly. I stopped, but didn't turn around. I hope you're happy, he said. I considered that too. Then I spoke, steady and final. I'm free. And I walked out, leaving him seated at a table that no longer belonged to my future. Time doesn't heal everything, but it does clarify. 6 months passed quietly, not in the dramatic, cinematic way people expect after a collapse, but in measured increments. Mornings rebuilt, evenings reclaimed, habits replaced. I moved into a smaller place near Isla's school, sunlight in the kitchen, a tree outside her bedroom window. No echoes of arguments that never quite happened but always lingered. She adjusted faster than I did. Children don't romanticize what's broken. They accept what's consistent. She started sleeping through the night again. Her grades stabilized. She laughed more easily. When she talked about her father, it was factual. Not longing, not angry. Just information. I followed her lead. I returned to work slowly. Not out of desperation, but intention. I took consulting projects on my terms. Brands that wanted strategy, not spectacle. Clients who valued clarity over chaos. It surprised people how quickly momentum returned once I stopped apologizing for existing. I stopped explaining my story to those who weren't part of it. I stopped softening language to make others comfortable. I stopped shrinking my decisions to fit expectations that had never protected me anyway. That was the real transformation. Colton drifted to the edges of my life. Updates came through the app. Scheduled visits. Missed ones, too. No dramatics. No reconciliation attempts. just the slow recalibration of someone learning what it means to be peripheral. I heard things, of course. People always tell you things they think you'll want to hear. He moved again. Cheaper place, further out. He tried contract work. It didn't last. His name still carried residue in rooms where trust mattered. Serena vanished completely. New city, new industry, a reset that cost her more than she anticipated. I didn't celebrate that. I understood it. Fallout doesn't discriminate. It follows proximity. One afternoon, Isla asked me a question while we were walking home from school. Do you ever miss Dad the way things used to be? I thought about it honestly. I miss the idea I had of our family, I said, but not the version we were actually living. She nodded. I like it better now. That was enough. I stopped checking the past for meaning. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, wondering if I'd missed something, said something differently, held on longer. There was nothing left to extract. The truth is simple and inconvenient. Betrayal doesn't just break trust, it rearranges identity. You either resist that rearrangement, or you let it make you precise. I chose precision. I learned what peace actually feels like. Not relief, not numbness, but alignment. The absence of constant adjustment. The quiet confidence of knowing your life no longer depends on someone else's integrity. I didn't rebuild louder. I rebuilt cleaner. One evening, after Isla went to bed, I stood on the balcony and watched the city settle into night. Lights blinking on, people moving through their own private reckonings. I thought about that first night, the rooftop, the gift bag, the moment everything cracked open in front of strangers. I wouldn't change it. Public betrayal feels like annihilation at first, but it has one advantage private lies never offer. It ends the story immediately. No ambiguity, no lingering doubt, no negotiation with denial. Just truth. Exposed, undeniable, irreversible. And once you survive that, nothing scares you the same way again. I didn't win by destroying him. I won by no longer needing to measure my life against his choices. Betrayal didn't make me bitter. It made me exact. And freedom, I learned, isn't the absence of loss. It's the presence of yourself, fully, finally, and without permission. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story resonated with you in any way, take a second and hit the hype button to show your support. I'd really love to hear your thoughts, or even your own experience, in the comments below. Your words matter here. And if you want more real, powerful stories like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. I truly appreciate you being here.